Welcome to the Get Fit Guy's quick and dirty tips to slim down and shape up. My name is Ben Greenfield. I'm the Get Fit Guy, and this is part 2 of a special 2-part series about whether or not cardio can kill you. If you want to hear part 1, then head over to quickanddirtytips.com and look for episode 265. And you can also, when you're there, access the show notes to this episode, episode number 266. That's all over at quickanddirtytips.com. So last week, we took a deep dive into a topic that was based on a recent article and study reported on in the Wall Street Journal. Is cardio going to kill you? You learned all about the study, and you also learned about the glaring fact that diet was completely ignored in the study. Well, this week, we're jumping straight back into the topic. Let's begin where we left off. Consideration number 2 is that intensity matters. While the study at hand acknowledges that intensity for long periods of time can cause damage to the arteries, it fails to point out the fact that intensity for shorter periods of time can actually allow you to become just as fit without subjecting your body to voluminous stress. For example, according to one study on the effect of high-intensity interval training on oxidative enzymes responsible for increasing endurance, there were enormous increases in skeletal muscle oxidative enzymes in 7 weeks in subjects who did 4 to 10 30-second maximum cycling sprints with 4 minutes of recovery between each sprint, and they did this just 3 days a week. Another 6-week-long training study compared the increase in oxidative enzymes that resulted from 4 to 6 30-second maximum effort cycling sprints, each followed by 4.5 minutes of recovery, performed 3 days a week. And they compared this to just regular steady-state cycling for about 40 to 60 minutes at an easier aerobic intensity, done 5 days a week. Well, the levels of oxidative enzymes responsible for increasing endurance in the subject who performed the high-intensity interval training program were significantly higher, even though they were training at just a fraction of the volume of the aerobic group. So how could this favorable endurance adaptation happen with such short periods of time spent exercising? Well, it turns out that the increased density of mitochondria and oxidative enzyme activity, which both significantly increase endurance, derived from high-intensity interval training are caused by completely different message signaling pathways in your body than those created by traditional endurance training. When you do high-intensity interval training, a master switch is activated that promotes favorable endurance adaptations. This master switch is known as PGC1 alpha. That stands for Peroxisome Proliferator Activated Receptor Gamma Coactivator 1 alpha. That's a mouthful. PGC1 alpha causes a favorable increase in mitochondrial density and oxidative enzyme activity, but can be activated by 2 completely separate signaling pathways. One pathway called the calcium calmodulin dependent kinase pathway, and another called the adenosine monophosphate activated protein kinase pathway. That first one is abbreviated the CAMK pathway. That second one is abbreviated the AMPK pathway. Anyways, continuous, voluminous endurance training seems to activate the master PGC1 alpha switch via the CAMK pathway. But intense interval training activates that master switch via a completely different pathway, the AMPK pathway. So ultimately, it turns out there's 2 different ways to train endurance, train for a marathon or any other long activity. One method would use short, intense effort, while the other method would use long, voluminous, and often intense exercise. Now, the recent study found that this latter method was the one that's harmful to the heart and can build up plaque in the coronary arteries. The takeaway message? Why not stick to high-intensity interval training if the results you get from it are just as good? Now, point number 3 is that stress matters. Let's face it, many people who do intense endurance events like marathons and Ironman triathlons are also hard-charging, successful business people. And there are demographic studies that show just what I mean that I'll link to in the show notes. And these people don't just subject themselves to stress from exercise, but also stress from career, relationships, managing a home or business, hobbies, paying the bills, and everything else that goes along with wanting to be good at endurance, but not necessarily at the same time everything that goes along with being a professional athlete who can dedicate adequate time to sleep and recovery and de-stressing. My friend Mark Sisson has actually talked about this in his book, The Primal Connection, in which he says that a major factor in the success of pro endurance athletes is the absence of significant work stress, like deadlines or office obligations. The way that Mark puts it when describing his experiences coaching a team of world-ranked professional endurance athletes and comparing their lives to the life of, say, an amateur athlete is like this. The typical amateur athlete was a type A overachiever with a demanding career and a busy family life. Fitting in the requisite workouts was a constant juggling act between work and family obligations. The word squeeze was used repeatedly to describe scheduling efforts, starting with the morning alarm and an abrupt commencement of the day's first workout. Pacing seemed to be an obsession, not just for tracking workout speed, but minding the clock at all times in order to remain on time for every item on the packed daily agenda. The popular quick lunchtime swim workout referred more to the peripherals than the lap times, rushing out of the office, a presto changeo in the locker room, a 1-minute post-workout shower, and then bursting back into the office an hour later with water beads still dripping from hair onto collar. In contrast, the professional athletes, whose job was to simply race fast, live lives centered around their workouts with minimal interference from real-life distractions or social obligations. While the pros conducted their workouts aggressively, the pace of their lives was leisurely. Lunchtime swim? Sure, but instead of toweling off, jerking the tie back into place, and rushing out to the parking lot, the post-swim routine of the pros consisted of lingering in the poolside spa for nearly as long as the actual workout, shooting the breeze, stretching tight muscles, and generally decompressing from their intense effort in the water. Eventually, they'd move from the spa into an easy lunch involving more shooting of the breeze. After that, they remounted their bikes for a couple more hours of pedaling, then took an afternoon nap, followed by a late-day run, followed by another stretching or icing session, followed by a quiet evening of TV, reading, or lingering over a huge meal. As I spent more time in the world, I learned that the competitive advantage enjoyed by these professionals went beyond their impressive workouts. Embracing life with purpose and at a more leisurely pace produces extraordinary results. So ultimately, and this is back to me now, and we're out of Mark Sisson's book, stress is stress, no matter whether it's from exercise or from lifestyle. And the more stress you're placing on yourself from your lifestyle, the less stress you may be able to place on yourself from exercise. So the question begs to be answered. What's the issue? The lifestyle that goes along with the folks drawn to doing things like fast marathons, or the fast marathons themselves? It would be interesting, and I think quite revealing to see the coronary calcium scores of, say, a professional Kenyan marathoner versus a pretty fast CEO marathoner. So, what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the matter of whether runners have one shoe in the grave or whether cardio can kill you. So you can leave your comments or join the conversation when you go over to facebook.com/getfitguy. That's facebook.com/getfitguy. And until next time, I'm Ben Greenfield, the Get Fit Guy, asking you, what are you waiting for? Go get fit.